right, everyone. Welcome for another interview with a creative person. I'd like to introduce Myles Newberry, who we we grew up in the same town. I assume you grew up in Newton, Kansas. We went to the same
Yes,
high
it is.
school. Um, we weren't in the same class, but I remember Miles, and he has really pursued the passion of photography and has created some really amazing photos. And I thought I'd invite him to talk about that today. So thank you for joining, Miles.
Well, I'm excited to be here. It photography is one of my favorite topics. I love talking about it, and um, I've
That's
kind of, used that. I teach a few classes here and there on photography, and so I like to share, my
great.
knowledge.
Great. I appreciate it. And you live now in Illinois.
Yep.
You mentioned that you live near a reserve, a wildlife reserve near the Mississippi River. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. I live in Sterling, Illinois, which is just about an hour to the east of the Quad Cities and the Mississippi River. And all along the river, there is the Upper Mississippi Wildlife Refuge. And it's a major wildlife area for all kinds of different wildlife. I mean, there are times when we might have, hundreds of thousands of snow geese or sandhill cranes or what have you that are all right there in our area. And it's just some pretty spectacular events to be able to go over and capture images of. Plus, it's also a big area for bald eagles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Where I live in Sterling, I'm about, 2 blocks from a river, another river called the Rock River. And there's a big island that sits right in the middle of our town that during the winter months, when the water gets frozen most places, it in itself is an eagle refuge. And so at sometimes during the year, if it's cold enough, I might have 60 or 70 eagles right out my back door.
Wow. Wow. Well, you're doing something that I have always wanted to do, but I never prioritized. I've wanted to get a really good camera and I've wanted to study photography because I really appreciate when people know how to do it well and they can capture some amazing images. And I've noticed over time that you've been able to really get I mean, like, I'm no photographer critic, but I'd say world class in my opinion. um,
Okay.
and so it seems to me that you're probably one of those guys then that would go out early before the sun rises and maybe sit out in the cold rain for a couple hours to get the right shot.
I have done that. Yes. It's it's kind of funny. You know, I'm we're we're getting older and I start to feel those things a little bit more. But, you know, when I'm in that mode, it's like I was just in Rocky Mountain National Park about 2 months ago, and it's just one of those
Oh,
until the sun goes down because it's just such an amazing place. You don't want to miss anything, and
yeah.
then you wake up the next morning and you're all ready to do the same thing.
Hey, we might have to edit this because we're having some
Can you still hear
internet.
me?
Everything that you were talking about from the Rocky Mountain when you went out to visit it has been choppy. So can you hear me all right now?
Oh, you want, you want me to redo it?
Yeah. Could you?
Yeah, I can hear you
So
fine.
okay, let's try it again. Like, so tell me about your visit to the Rocky Mountains.
Well, I've been trying to go there every summer and spend time there in the park, and and so you get older and you getting up early and running on a few hours sleep gets a little harder. But then when I get up there in the mountains and you see everything there is to stop until it gets dark, and then you're just sitting there, you know, in your sleeping bag going, well, when sunrise, and you just find so many amazing things. My one of my last trip up there, I was watching the sunrise and I found a really cool marina that had a really nice look to it. So I had all these sailing ship or these little sailboats with the sun coming up right behind them.
Mm,
And then all of a sudden I hear this screeching and there's an osprey that is sitting right behind me. It landed on the antenna about 20 feet away from me.
wow.
And you know, and it was just, you know, the whole time you're there, you just don't know what cool thing you're going to see next.
So it's like the photographic experience or taking photos is a lot of work.
Mhm.
It could be draining, but it's also probably good for the soul. It's kind of like a camping trip, and then at those times when it might be cold and dark and everything, you might find new new things, new ways to new things to photograph.
Yeah. Well, you know, every year I get to shoot something I've never seen before,
Yeah.
and that's pretty neat in itself. You know, this last year my big find was a they call them a Clark's nuthatch, and they're kind of they're a little smaller than a crow. They kind of me look like they're kind of pigeon colored, but that one bird, what they it does is it harvests and collects the pine nuts from different pine trees, and then it goes around and it hides those. And that one bird, like at Yellowstone, that bird is responsible for keeping the forest planted. And it's just an
Mm.
amazing, you know, animal. And when you learn about how important it is to the ecosystem, you know, it's just even cooler.
Yeah, that's very interesting. How long have you been doing photography? When did you first get interested? Are you still
Well,
there? Oh,
I actually started when I was 14, and I started when we went to high school. I was the guy that was always lurking around taking pictures, and uh, I don't know, you know, I've thought about that because you asked me, you know, where did I really get inspired to start doing photography? And I've thought about that for a bit. And you know, I when I was a little younger, uh, I got presented with you know, the chance to play an instrument, and uh, oddly enough, the music teacher gave us the choice of guitar or banjo. And it was like kid after kid, guitar, 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 guitar. Well, it got down to me and banjo. So I said, give me the banjo. So it's just sometimes you find that thing that's different, you know, and I
yeah,
think kind of photography was, you know, for a shy kid, something different that I could do, and it was unique to me.
yeah.
And so I just kind of from there it kind of morphed into a whole bunch of other stuff, you know, along the way. uh
So I have this memory now that I think I remember seeing you photographing football games and basketball games.
yep,
And
yep,
you probably worked for the school newspaper, right?
I did that in
There you go.
yearbook, and then I
Yep.
also for a while worked for the town newspaper,
Oh wow.
you know, and so I shot for the Newton Kansan for a while.
Hmm.
And then I kind of played around for a bit for a few years in the mountains and played skier, and then my buddy down in Texas, who is a big influence on me, his name's Dick Patrick, and he came by and we skied for the day. And he goes, "Dude, you need to be in Texas and shooting." And so he talked me into moving down to Texas, where he was at. And Dallas is a big center for photography, and that's really kind of where I started learning to be a photographer. Because you know, I think one thing for college kids and people who are inspired to be photographers is they learn stuff at college and then they think that they know something.
Mm.
But where you really learn photography is when you get into that working situation and you see how all that stuff is applied. And you know, for me at the time, I ended up doing a lot of commercial stuff. So I shot a lot for pennies. I worked at a catalog house, and uh, I've got, you know, for quite a few years, I was shooting if it was toys or electronics or things like that, I was one of the guys shooting that for pennies.
Wow, that's great. So a lot of hands-on experience, hands-on learning, and
Yeah.
that I guess that builds expertise and the
Yeah,
10,000 hours of work.
I've heard that. You're not the first person
Right?
that's brought that up recently. Uh,
Malcolm Gladwell quote. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I actually, yeah, I was reading about him the other day because somebody else mentioned that to me too, and there's some logic to that. I think that if
Mhm.
you're realistic, and if you're, for me, I don't think it's ever possible to be an expert,
Mm.
because there's always something else to learn,
Yep.
uh, you know, and so it's if you're always open to that, I think that is always going to help your photography. You know, and one of the neat things is kind of my last stand in photography in Dallas was is I was my friend I worked for my friend Dick, who
Mm.
is probably one of the largest food photographers in the country. He
Yep.
has a pretty major operation there in Dallas, and he shoots for all, if there's a restaurant, he's probably shot them at some point.
Oh.
And it was interesting to see the people that come in that are associated with that stuff, because you've got photographers, you've got stylists, you've got art directors, and you have all these different people who come in, and you kind of get to see what drives them. And
Mhm.
and one of the things that struck me, it wasn't that they were smarter than other people or what have you, is that all the good ones had passion.
Oh, right.
And like for my friend Dick, I've known him since college,
Yep.
and he was one of these guys who, when we were trying to decide which bar to go to, he was already thinking about photography. I mean, he as a even as a college student, he was already shooting jobs because his family was involved with photography, and so he already had a very good idea and a vision of where he was going. And so I got to hang out with him as his vision of as he evolved as a photographer. And that's when I kind of fell into my first big trap as a photographer is and I would suggest, or I would encourage anybody who wants to get into photography and do it as for a living, is to find what your passion is,
Right.
you know, um, and make that, because I watched a lot of us who were friends of Dick. We all saw what he was doing and we all wanted to do what he was doing. The only problem was is that what he was doing was unique to him
Mhm.
and never going to be, it was like being junior versions of him didn't ever help us out. And so, and so after a few years of being away from photography, that's when I actually really kind of discovered who I wanted to be as a photographer. And, it was the passion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can relate because like in the art world with painting, they say it's important to find your own style and your own passion as well. I think there's nothing worse than someone trying to imitate a famous artist and just painting.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do the Jackson Pollock drip paintings and they just paint them over and over again. And yeah, it
Yeah.
maybe sell, but I just, to me, it's not that interesting. And it's just an imitation. So absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Do you remember Mrs. Short from high school?
Um,
Bonnie Short?
oh, yeah. I can remember her. I don't remember what she taught.
Well, she was one of those teachers that in high school was kind of scary, for the students, because she
Mm,
was very strict and very,
mhm.
um, I took that before I went off to college because I was thinking that if I learned more about art, it could help me with photography. And so it kind of got me in a frame of mind about certain things. And like when I'm a big Ansel Adams guy. I think
Yeah.
almost every photographer who's worth his salt is a big Ansel Adams guy,
Yep.
because it wasn't just how or what he shot, it was how he thought about what he shot.
Yep.
And but so like Mrs. Short kind of gave me an appreciation for art, and along with a couple other people, I had friends that were big into impressionism,
Mhm,
and then I became a big fan of Van Gogh.
mhm.
And I'm kind of, that's one of my fears, is that I'm not going to become a known for my photography until I go crazy and lose an ear or something.
Right.
But um, but I always tell my photography students is that quote from Van Gogh about how I dream about painting and then I paint what I dream.
Nice.
And for photography, Ansel Adams talks about that a lot, is that the whole pre-visualization of already having an idea of what you want to take a picture of, and then you try to execute and find the situations to make that happen. So I find a lot of times that I might have a shot in my head and then I see it, when I'm out, doing
Yeah.
my my travels. And then so it's like it makes it just easier to do the composition and all those type of things when you're already thinking about it. So it's
I had never heard anybody say that. That's really interesting. We should jump into your photography and let people see it.
okay.
Can you share?
Okay, so let's do a screen share, and for a second you'll see my cluttered desktop here as I bring it up. But we'll just go to the front page of my website.
Can you go back? No, I want to make
Oh,
sure that I that one that has the orange clouds in the storm, I think is unique. Or I have not seen photography like it before, where there's a storm and there was so much color in the storm. I wanted to
oh,
make sure I ask you about that one.
okay. Well, here, let me get to that shot. But I think this is the shot you were asking about.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So
this was actually one of this is one of probably about 25 pictures I did that evening. And this is right near the Lowell Rural Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And and I always like South Dakota because it reminds us a lot of where we grew up. And so there was a it was that time of the summer where you get those evening thunderstorms, and so those were kind of popping up all over the place. And so you had the storms coming in, and if you can imagine that this is looking to the south, and so all the while the sun is setting in the west, and so
mhm,
that golden light from the sun is reflecting on those clouds. And so that's how you get those colors in the clouds, is that and then you can see as it starts to rain, it the rain also picks up those colors from the sunset.
yep, yeah, and that yeah. So you can see the landscape, the rolling hills at the very bottom, and then the rain coming down in shades of pink and orange. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
it just you just never I love sunsets because you just don't ever know what you're going to get. I mean, there are so many variables,
mhm,
and it's all thinking about, because you know there's knowing about art, there's also knowing about how the physics affect what you're seeing too with photography. And uh, when we look at things, everything we see is light reflecting off of something and coming back to our eye. Okay,
right.
so the only reason we see something like this is because we're seeing that reflection. And so, and with rain and clouds and stuff, it acts like a giant refractor, and so we get to see all the colors that are in the spectrum because of how you know how big one water droplet is, or how or there's
Yep. Yep.
and it it changes all the time, and
Yep.
like you never see the same rainbow twice, or things like that. And so it's just it was a it
And
was
rapidly evolving, and the light changes quickly, and the clouds are moving quickly, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, and actually, I didn't get one because lightning photography is kind of a different
mhm,
technique, and you there's a piece of equipment you can use that they make a like a lightning trigger that you can use that will catch lightning when it is bright out, but most of the time you kind of have to kind of rely on it being dark to catch a good lightning shot.
mm,
um, but there was some lightning in here. I just didn't get I didn't get lucky enough to catch one, but like I said, I did get lucky enough to. I mean,
yeah,
this went on for maybe 2 hours
wow.
of watching this sunset evolve.
Okay, so thanks for showing that one. That was one of my favorite. Now I want to make sure you get a chance to show any particular photos that you'd like to show
Um,
everyone.
you know, uh, you know, it's hard to say, when I have where I have my favorites. Sometimes I'm a little bit too critical of my photography, and I think probably, you as an artist probably have those moments too where you kind of beat yourself up over something, and then everybody else likes it better than what you thought. But I just what I really like is when I can capture something that's unique.
Yeah,
Um, you know, and when here's an example of what I was talking about as far as capturing lightning.
yeah. These
And
are. I know this is an overused term, but atmospheric is just that's the word I was thinking of when I look at this. Like you can feel, it's like you can feel you're there.
Yeah, and I had been looking for months for a good storm like this, and I haven't hit one since. I shot this probably 4 years ago, and I had spent my summers in West Virginia working for the Boy Scouts as a photographer at their new national base there in West Virginia. And West Virginia is just all kinds of lightning.
Mm,
And my walk every morning, which I'll show you because it's kind of a cool shot, and and it kind of is a good illustration um, about photography. uh, see, it's landscapes, but this shot here,
oh yeah.
and uh,
Is that
so
that's a bridge?
yeah,
Uh,
that's a
bridge.
bridge, and it's a suspension bridge that's there at the Boy Scout camp. And this was my walk every morning. And in West Virginia, you get these these storms that roll into the mountains there because it's a different type of mountain. And so this was the view as the sun was coming up in the morning, because it gets real foggy there in the morning, and then it gets into those mountains, and you get some really magnificent uh, cloud formations, because clouds create texture,
Mhm.
and you can create all kinds of cool things with clouds. And this is West Virginia again. And the thing about this, I actually took these with my phone.
Huh.
Yeah, and so this is South Dakota that I took with my phone. Um, so this always kind of reminds me of that Van Gogh shot, or the famous Van Gogh,
Painting.
yeah, the painting, just because
Yeah.
of the scales and the colors and stuff. Um, but like this one here, I made a 20 by 60-inch print of that with my phone, because it was shot on my phone. And just because my knowledge of my equipment and how to use it, I was able to capture this and come up with a good image. And I think but for young photographers right now, I think that is the biggest trap, is that they think that their camera equipment is what's making a shot for them.
Right.
And it's really all about how you see the world.
Yep.
and and that's what makes every photographer unique. It's not that he uses this camera or another camera, it's how he sees the world. And I was going to show you just and where you really see that for a photographer, I think, is when you're doing black and white, because black and white is all about really kind of creating a vision that people don't really see. You don't really get to see this with the naked eye. You kind of have to create the feel. And that's kind of a lot of what Ansel Adams did with his photography. Is he had that image in his head, and so he tried to find the right conditions to shoot those things. And
Wow.
so and so um, let me show you a black and white that I am very fond of. Uh,
So when you decide to make it black and white or color to display it that way, it's based, I guess, on, well, like you said, if it shows something better or is more interesting in black and white, I would guess if it had really interesting contrasts and subtleties, I guess that you don't want to be distracted by in the colors, huh?
right. Well, you look for tones.
Tones.
Um, and and see what Ansel Adams did is he created a whole system of, yeah, this was the shot I was going to show you, but that is just
Wow.
about the tones and the lights and the darks. And so you start looking for, because he had everything defined
Mhm.
into a whole scale. And when you're looking at a shot like this, is you have like your whites on one side and your darks on the other side, and then he had them all rated into 10 different tones.
Mm.
And then it was all about trying to capture as many of those tones as you could, and so that, with black and white is where a photographer can really get creative, because so much of the time you can just shoot whatever you're shooting and you're just bringing back what you see. But Ansel Adams had that similar thing that he would say, like Van Gogh did, is that what I do is I see something in my mind's eye, and then I
Mm.
try to bring that back to you, the viewer, and have you see what I see.
Wow.
And I think
Yeah,
for
that's the true mind of a genius. I didn't realize it was that much pre-thought goes into these photos. I thought it was more a, you know, happenstance by being at the right place at the right time, but definitely
well,
much more than that.
it's there's a little bit of luck involved. I will, and other photographers hate it when you say that,
Mm.
but there is some luck. But there's an old saying: the harder you work, the luckier you get. And
Yep.
you
Yep.
have to put yourself in a position to be lucky.
Yep.
So, like when you catch a shot like this, where the circumstance of the light pouring right through that hole at that given time is only going to happen at that one moment, and you'll probably never ever happen again.
Yep.
You have to get lucky to be there. But then, if you're out there actively searching and working and looking, then you increase those opportunities to be in those situations.
So I imagine you're always carrying a camera with you wherever you go, just in case you run
Yeah,
into that.
I actually I have my man purse now.
Yep.
I I actually carry a little small Nikon J5, and it's really just a little bit more than a point and shoot. But I had been searching for one that I could just carry, always have in my little backpack. I have it's just a little sling pack, and I carry it with me. And the nice thing about it is, for a point and shoot, I can shoot it in manual. It will shoot raw files, and it even actually has interchangeable lenses, and it's no bigger around than a credit card. And so that's
Wow.
the camera that I keep with me all the time. But uh, I have I have four bodies when I'm out shooting. I carry four bodies with me, and chances are I'll have two to three of those set up with different lenses. And so that, depending on what comes what opportunity comes to me. I always have one camera with a 500 millimeter lens on it, because when I am out, I do come across a lot of wildlife. But then I have another camera that is more set up for landscapes. I even uh, to give you an example of some of the other stuff that I do, and it's also an area of photography that you can be very creative with, and that's macro stuff. And I'll have a camera set up with macro photography. Like this shot here um, is part of two. It's one of two different shots that I really like. Um,
Wow.
this is a thistle, and I was shooting honeybees, or actually bumblebees, feeding on the thistle.
Mhm.
And so there's this shot. So just to remember that for perspective. And then there's this shot. Where did it just go here? This shot here. Okay, so see the size of the bumblebee there?
Yep.
And right there, just right in the middle, just down from his abdomen,
Right
is one
there.
of those tiny little insects
Yeah.
that was from the picture. And so it's like, you have like those different layers of sizes, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, when I can't see something, I'll take my macro photography or my macro lens, and I just start walking like a path and a perimeter, and whether there's flowers there or bumblebees or what have you, and there's just all kinds of cool little things that are right below our nose that
So you must now have a catalog of, can I say, thousands of photos?
Uh, you know, um, you know, this website is I'm getting ready to release this website. It's something that I've been working on now for a bit because, but it represents about 10 years worth of work.
Wow.
And I guess when you do something like this, you just don't sometimes realize how much stuff you create. And I've been just uploading images into this new website now for about 2 months. And I am about um, 95% done to where I can release this to the public. And then I mean, I have other platforms um, that are available, for people to see my stuff. But this will be the whole of my catalog of everything of all the stuff I've shot. But
The
but the macro
grand,
stuff,
the grand culmination of everything.
right? And but like macro stuff, like I was trying. Was this? I just thought this was cool because
Yeah. Yeah, that's unique.
it's
The whatever's behind that grain, you can see it in focus.
right.
Yeah, and you're not quite sure what it is, but you know there's something. And I love the octagon shape of the light
Yeah,
rays or whatever.
that's one of those coveted photography things that you'll hear photographers talk about called bokeh, and it's it's a spherical. Uh, I want to say it's a spherical aberration, but what it is that what you're seeing is light out of focus, and it creates kind of those. But a lot of times photographers will try to create composition through focus. And so where you have your focus, say, that are on those little four legs sticking out there, and then you have this is actually looking into a sunset, but because this is a blade of grass, everything else looks huge in comparison. And it just gives you some interesting looks. But um, I've got another really good example of that effect in dragonflies. Uh,
Lots of dragonflies.
yeah, oh, dragonflies are so neat. Yeah, here, but you can see how he's actually on the edge of a little bridge,
Mm,
and what you see behind him is all of the little ripples in the water that the light is reflecting off of.
yeah, great
And
photo.
so and that gives you that kind of uh, that effect. Now, it's one of, like I said, it goes back to one of those things of, every photographer and artist has those things that just drives them crazy. For me, I have a hard time with man-made objects and things.
Mm.
And but seeing how he was on a bridge, there wasn't really any way around it. But that would have been great if he would have just been on like a piece of reed or something and had that great background in it. But
Yeah.
sometimes you take
It
what it
works.
yeah, you take what it gives you. So
Yeah. Well, this interview has gone on about 4 times longer than any others I've done, which is fine. I think it's been very interesting, but we probably should end it here because I'm afraid that the file is going to be so large we won't be able to transfer it.
uh,
But let me ask, like, if you could unshare real quick.
okay.
I was just going to say, thanks again for doing this. I find it super interesting, and so interesting that maybe we could do it again sometime on a particular subject or something.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And uh, and I, like I said, I enjoy talking about this stuff. You know, uh, I'm kind of a my philosophy on photography is I like to share, and if I can help somebody out with knowledge, I like to do that. It's one
Well,
of the things we're all in this together.
yeah, absolutely. And the heart of a creative, if you're creating things, we naturally want to share it and get feedback on it. I always say I'm not necessarily looking for people to say they love my art or anything, but I just like to share it and get their feedback and their thoughts on what it means to them. So yeah, this has been great.
Well, like I said, I can ramble on, so I appreciate you letting me do this because this has been fun.
I'll have to edit it at a few points. We had a few
That's
technical
fine.
difficulties, but most of it came through loud and clear. So have stay safe through that snowstorm over there, and I look forward to seeing a lot of great more photography. And we'll stay in touch.
All right. Well, you take care.
All right, thanks, Miles.